I'm just gonna look at thumbnails so that we can find it. Okay, so here's our light map. I've got it applied to the surfaces we want it to be applied to, so we can now go over to the object section and we can click on our house inside object here, and you can see here it is. Let's now rename this texture so that we know what it is from the object section. So let's call it light map house inner. Okay, so now we've defined that, let's go to the object section and let's go to the object view and take a look at the house. So you can see we now have it here, but everything's very dark. So let's select all of the surfaces and let's go to stage 2. You can see our light map has been assigned here, and if we go to mapping, you can see it's set on UV set 1. Now this is correct. We defined those mapping coordinates in 3ds Max before we exported, so we know that those are correct. What we now need to do is go to the color blending and set up the color blending so that our light map is visible. So what I want to do here is set this to texture modulate times 2 current. And what that will do is it will multiply by 2 times. As we bring the emissive sliders up, the light map becomes much brighter, and so our whole house begins to light up. As we bring the sliders back down again, you see the whole house begin to dim down again. Because we have the diffuse slider set at 0, this means that there is no lighting coming from any of the real-time lights in the scene, so all of the lighting is coming from the light map. The settings for the first Let's now look at creating an automatic door for our scene. So if we go to templates and then go to cameras and walk through camera, we drag that template into the scene. You can see we've now got 2 new channel trees here. Now one of these is for the camera itself and the other one is for logic for the camera. So what I'm going to do is keep those off to the left of our scene and use shortcuts of these to connect them up to the project. So we can now get rid of our basic camera because we're replacing it with our walkthrough camera, and let's connect the walkthrough camera up to where it was. We also need to connect the logic up to our start channel. Now this small piece of logic here basically allows us to reset the position of our camera by pressing the space key. So let's now go and have a look at our camera and see what's happening. Now you can see at the moment everything's just black here. We can't see anything even though we are looking through the camera. And if we look in here, you can see there's a value here which is falling. Now it's falling because we haven't specified a collision for our camera, and this walkthrough camera has a gravity factor, so it's basically fallen through our scene and it's now continuing to fall. So what we need to do is specify a collision for our camera. Now you can see at the moment we have 3 channels here called collision objects. Now each of these are for linking objects to which you want the camera to collide with. So in our case, we want our camera to collide with the house inner object and our environment object. So if we go to our channel view that shows us both channel graphs, we can now drag in the environment over here and link these up to the collision objects. So the house inside connect to this one, and the environment can connect up to our second collision object here. If you double click the collision object channel, you can see a dialog comes up with a button called Create Tree. Now this Create Tree, when you click it, basically what happens is our collision object will then go down to the object which you've connected to it, and it will scan through that object and get information about where collisions should occur. So effectively it's scanning through the geometry and storing that information inside the channel, so then our camera will know where collisions should occur. So we've done that for both of these channels here. Now hopefully our camera will collide with our scene. You can see at the moment it's about 50 kilometers below, so let's move that up again, and you can see we are now, if we go to the animation section, on top of the roof of our scene. So if we move over across, you can now see we're looking through a walkthrough camera and we can freely walk around. So this just uses a standard interface of using the cursor keys to move, and the mouse allows you to rotate the camera and look from any direction you want to. So you can see this is now working. Wherever we come into contact with a wall, we can't go through it. And so if we go through here and find our doorway, we can now go inside the scene and walk around our house. And you can see the reflection we defined for the windows and glass is now working pretty well. We're now going to focus on saving. Now you can see in our group tree here, our current channel group, the Tutorial 03 environment, has not been saved. It's telling us that it's not been saved there. So let's have a look at saving it. If we go to File, Save Group As, and then select a place to save it, and just call it Tutorial 03 environment, and then hit save, you can see that it's saying that it's not in the same group as our project directory, and that's because actually our start group also has not been saved yet. So I'm going to go here and save it in the same place as start group, save, and you can see all of those messages have gone now. They're both in the same directory. You can see here our project directory, and so we don't have any problems. Now it's important to know that each group is effectively a different file with Quest3D, so you have to make sure that when you're running a big project with multiple channel groups, when you want to leave and you've made changes in lots of different channel groups, you must go to File, Save All. When you hit Save All, every single channel group is saved. Another thing to be aware of with Quest3D is that when you're saving, two files are generated. The first is a CGR file. Now the CGR file is the file in which all of your project information is held. Now the second file, the IGR file, is basically all of the editor information. This just stores information about where each channel is located in the channel graph, text in the channel graph, and all things to do with the editor. If you delete the IGR file, you can still run your project by using the CGR, but your channels will be all over the place and it'll be very hard to navigate around. So it's very important to be aware of both files whenever copying data. So in this tutorial we've started by looking at importing objects. We then looked at using multiple channel groups. We then looked at tuning the visual properties of objects, first looking at setting the emissive values for an object, and then looking at using an alpha channel from within a texture. We then looked at using multiple texture stages, reflection, and then went on to look at light mapping, adding a walk-through camera to the scene, and then finally we looked at saving. In the next tutorial, we'll start by creating a simple on-off switch activated by pressing a key. We're then going to create a HUD or an overlay display. Then we'll create a door for our house that automatically opens when we approach it. And then we'll use logic to only display our HUD when we are inside the house.